York Times, Saturday, April 10th, 2021. In quotes at the top left, all the news that's fit to print. Then it says the New York Times. Not reassuring. Then it says the New England edition. Today, periodic clouds and sunshine. High 70, tonight becoming cloudy, low 51. Tomorrow, cloudy, cooler, rain spreading from the southwest, high 53. Weather map page A24. So we've got some pretty generic weather report with no picture beside the name, and on the other side of the name is, in quotes in a box, all the news that's fit to print. So right away I'm seeing an emphasis on the weather, not reassuring, and an emphasis on stuff that's fit to print, not reassuring. All right. Also, it says $3 on it. I paid $6, or my sister did. All right. First story with a picture in color of an empty square in Mumbai, which I'm sure is very at least busy. I was gonna say, over crowded, but I don't, no idea. Under the picture caption, it says, Mumbai, India above. A record 131,871 virus cases were reported in the nation Friday, but officials have avoided broad restrictions. So, it does not indicate the age group of these people or how many people there are in Mumbai for their number 131,878 to be that relevant. Only that it's a big number, but India is not underpopulated. All right. Beside this story, it says, here's the accompanying story. Complacency deepens a virus disaster in India. So we have this big number apparently it's a big number. They've avoided broad restrictions, and the story reads, complacency deepens a virus disaster in India. So just, they're complacent, and now they're gonna die. And they're stupid because there's so many cases, and they're not even with broad restrictions. And the people who had the broad restrictions, like California, are not doing well. All right. Check out this story. When the coronavirus first struck India last year, the country enforced one of the world's strictest national lockdowns, so we liked that. The warning was clear: a fast spread in a population of 1.3 billion. That's a lot of people. Would be devastating. Though damaging and ultimately flawed, the lockdown and other efforts appeared to work. Hold on. Though damaging and ultimately flawed, the lockdown and other efforts appeared to work. So this original lockdown, which was damaging and flawed, is not what they're doing, and therefore are being complacent. It's a rough life being an Indian government leader. All right, so though damaging and ultimately flawed, I read that. Officials and the public dropped their guard. But when their guard was up, it was flawed and bad. So the fact is they just are ignorant, don't know how to put up their guard properly. All right. Infections dropped and death remained low. Officials and the public dropped their guard. Experts warned fruitlessly that the government's haphazard approach would bring a crisis when a new wave appeared. Now, the crisis is here. India on Friday reported a daily record of 131,878 new infections as COVID-19 races out of control. Deaths, while still relatively low, are rising. Okay. Over time, death does tend to rise, but vaccinations, a mammoth task in such a large country. So they're fucked anyway. Anyways. Are dangerously behind schedule. Whose schedule? Hospital beds are running short, but are still available, I assume. Parts of the country are reinforcing lockdowns. Scientists are rushing to track new strains, including the more hazardous variants found in Britain and South Africa. Hazardous. They may be hastening the spread. They may not be, though. Doesn't say that. But officials have declared contact tracking in some places to be simply impossible. So they may be making it worse, they may not be making it worse. Contact tracking is simply impossible in some locations. Complacency and government missteps have helped turn India from a seeming success story into one of the world's worst hit places, experts say. And epidemiologists warn that continuing failure there would have global implications. I don't know what an epidemiologist is. The number of infections during the first wave led some to believe the worst was over. India's youthful population, less susceptible to symptoms and death, created misperceptions about how. Continue on page A6. So they start sounding like they're, maybe going to say something intelligent when they start saying the number of infections during the first wave led some to believe the worst was over. Why? Who knows? Possibly because India's youthful population, less susceptible to symptoms and death, created misperceptions about how, and it just ends there. So apparently not enough people showed symptoms, not enough people died, and this created misperceptions about what? They hope you never try to find out. All right. Next story. Major setback to labor as Amazon employees reject unionization bid. So, if there's one thing we know about Amazon, it's that they're a giant evil corporation, and giant evil corporations don't like unions. So, setback to labor means they've had to fire a lot of people, and now they have a setback. Lopsided vote at an Alabama warehouse. I was just saying how I never talk about Alabama or hear about it, but that's because they've never been able to call them names probably before now. Let's continue. Amazon workers at a giant warehouse in Alabama. Giant warehouse? An Amazon giant warehouse? That doesn't sound likely. Right. Voted decisively against forming a union on Friday. Probably because they were told they'd all be fired if they voted for a union. Squashing the most significant organizing drive in the internet's giant history. Squashing the most significant organizing drive in the internet giant's history and dealing a crushing blow to labor and Democrats when conditions appeared ripe for them to make advances. Okay. These people aren't known for their giant, meaningful sentences. When I see a giant sentence, I'm worried. So this sentence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines long. Let's reread it. All right. This is one sentence. Amazon workers at a giant warehouse in Alabama voted decisively against forming a union on Friday, squashing the most significant organizing drive in the internet giant's history and dealing a crushing blow to labor and Democrats when conditions appeared ripe for them to make advances. So, these evil people that wanted to make advances and they're being called Democrats. These Democrats were making advances when conditions appeared ripe for them to get a union and some better pay and wages and benefits and things from Amazon, which I'm assuming they could afford. But a decisive vote against unionizing, the words of the New York Times, drive internet giants' history and dealing a crushing blow to labor and Democrats when conditions appeared. So, this doesn't sound good to me. Workers cast 1,798 votes against a union. How many workers are there? Giving Amazon enough to emphatically defeat effort by these people who are trying to get more money from top 3 richest companies in the world. Workers cast blah blah, defeat the ballot. So we're back to normal sized sentences all of a sudden. Ballots in favor of a union trailed at 738 fewer than 30% of the votes tallied according to federal officials. So I'm not terrible at math or reading, but I'm not really sure how many votes that means. Workers cast 1,798 votes against a union, giving Amazon enough to emphatically defeat the effort. Ballots in favor of a union trailed at 738, fewer than 30% of the votes tallied. So, of the votes tallied, they needed 30% to unionize. Union trailed at fewer than 30% of the votes tallied. So they had 738 votes, fewer than 30% of the votes tallied, according to federal officials. So a 6,000 person warehouse. Only cast 1,798 votes against a union, giving Amazon enough to emphatically defeat the effort. So less than 1/3 of the votes, less than 1/3 of the people who work there voted to not unionize, which was enough to squash it. Came as the pandemic effect on the economy and the election of a pro-labor president. Okay. Even as the pandemic's effort on the economy effect on the this is hurting my head. Came even as the pandemic's effect on the economy and the election of a pro-labor president had made the country more aware of the plight of essential workers. Amazon, which has repeatedly quashed labor activism, has appeared vulnerable as it faced increased scrutiny in Washington and around the world for market power and influence. President Biden signaled support for the union effort, as did Senator Bernie Sanders, the Vermont Independent. Okay, let's talk about Bernie Sanders. The pandemic, which drove millions of people to shop online, also raised questions of Amazon's ability to keep those employees safe. So they're going to spend extra money on that instead of their salaries. And the story ends, in mid-sentence again. Margaret O'Mara, a professor of the University of Washington who researches the history of technology companies, said Amazon's message that it offered good jobs with good wages had prevailed over criticisms by the over. So there were some criticisms that they prevailed over. But it could have been about the font of Amazon. That's pretty bad. Third story, errors at plant could set back vaccine drives. So be scared of corona. Prince Philip's dead. So is DMX, who they refer to as the preacher of pain. I've never heard before, and I find possibly not cool. Right, and in some sort of under column, where I'm sure we'll find a lot of garbage, we've got, in the UK, comedy as catharsis. Nobody knows what that means. They're going to assume it's bad. Caribbean volcano reawakens, so we're all going to die. Restraint blamed in Floyd case. Not the drugs. Weighing a bigger court. Let's read. President Biden ordered a study of adding justices to the Supreme Court. Progressives want more seats to offset a conservative majority. So that's not because they were democratically elected or... Anyway. Love and loss in Boulder. So don't even try to love anything. Football stars deadly turn. Don't play